Dear God, give us courage, give us hope, give us an ear to hear your voice as our good shepherd. Amen.
Amen.
About 30 years ago, my wife and I went to visit a friend of ours who had gone through a long journey becoming a priest in the Anglican Church. I taught a Bible class when I was early on in my ministry before I even thought about going to seminary at St. Bartholomew's in Manhattan. And she was one of our students, and after the end of the class, she and her husband was a British diplomat, she was Japanese. They were posted to England, and she sought ordination there, but she was Japanese, and they were a little skittish about even ordaining women, unless those Japanese women, and so finally his last posting came, and they moved to New Zealand. And we went to see her ordination, and as a result, we visited New Zealand. She subsequently became the canon pastor of the cathedral in New Zealand. While we were there, we went to see the sights in New Zealand, and as they say in New Zealand, there's more sheep than there are people. So like in Vermont, they say that. And indeed, they had not so many more sheep, they even had trained sheep. And we went to see a sort of a outdoor festival of events, highlighting the different types of sheep they had in Australia. I'd never seen so many different types of sheep. I would say 30, 40 different types of sheep. Some of them have horns. I didn't think sheep had horns, they did, rams. And some were brown, some were black, some were gray, some were yellow, some were white, some were small, some were large. It was just amazing. And they trained these sheep to come on two at a time. It was like a big stage in the side. They had ramps on the side that had sort of lower ramps of about 5 stacks of platforms for the rams and the sheep to come up. And they would come up, very regularly. It was just amazing how they trained these sheep. And at the end of it, they said, well, if anybody wants to carry a lamb, we have a lamb here. And I thought, oh boy, I've seen so many times Jesus carrying the lamb. I've got to do this myself too, what it's really like. So indeed, we hit the lamb. He was as big as a collie dog. He was bigger than a lamb, I thought. But anyway, I'm going to be Jesus. I'll pick up the sheep, and he's going to be, cuddly. While he was squirming around, and the next thing I knew, here comes the shepherd walking past me, just sort of at a glance, so the sheep choom out of my arms and went to follow the shepherd. And I realized the sheep know the shepherd's voice, and they all have some sort of name, and he didn't even have to call it. They just walked by, and the lamb was out of my hands. So I learned a lot about what I didn't know about lambs before, like herding cats, I think, in a way. But the symbol of sheep and the pastoral lambs is part of Israel, as you know. I don't know what it is. And we did take a tour of Holy Land some years later, and you could see the two shepherds crossing. Their flocks would cross, and somehow the sheep kept following the right shepherd. They didn't just suddenly veer off and follow a different shepherd. So they definitely know who's taken to the greenest pasture, and they would follow them. So this image of Jesus the shepherd is a fixture in the church on the fourth Sunday of every Easter. Fourth Sunday of Easter, every year we have a Good Shepherd passage. This is the third. The 8 is the first 10 verses, and then they have the next 8 or 10 verses. And then this is the last verses in chapter 10 of John. So it's a Good Shepherd Sunday every Sunday at this time, if you wonder why it is. Our friend who became an Anglican priest had been married a little before us, and she celebrated her 50th wedding anniversary last week and invited us to come to celebrate with them. And we did. We went to Japan. Her mother lives in Japan. Her mother is 110 years old. 110 years old. Anyhow, we went to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. They had been married in Japan. And while we were there, we learned quite a bit about Japan. We visited. I worked there before I was in seminary. I had been a financial analyst, and I had worked there a couple of weeks studying one of the pharmaceutical companies, and it was a whole industry actually in Japan. They take twice as many pills as we do, and they live about 3 or 4 years longer than we do, interestingly enough. Average lifespan of a woman is over 86, and men is over 80. longest living women in the world, and the third longest living men, they said. I think Hong Kong and Ireland somehow surpassed them by a couple of months. So they have a very pleasant lifestyle, very seemingly healthy lifestyle. We thought they didn't have nearly enough vegetables in their life, but whatever they did, it certainly works for them. We've been there before in Japan, and I'm wondering, I'm always sort of struggling with this issue. It's a very highly technologically developed country, in some ways even more than us, because they don't have a defense budget. We have a major defense budget, so all of our extra cash goes to, policing the world. Theirs goes into transportation. They have 9 bullet trains now. We had 1 bullet train over there 40 years ago. Now they have 9. It makes all their archipelago violence. And they run about 220 miles an hour. So the one we have from Boston to Washington, New York, they runs about 80 miles an hour. But anyhow, theirs run 220 miles an hour. So it's kind of amazing how the technology is going. If you don't have such a huge defense budget, I guess that makes a difference. But we took a tour of Tokyo last week, and the lady who was our tour guide said, what is our religion? People said, what is your religion? She said, well, our religion is really, it's a combination really. You say, well, everybody has their sort of Shinto in the first part of the life, and when they get to the end of the life, they become Buddhist, so they're Shinto Buddhists. And I tried to understand what that meant. Shinto means you worship your ancestors. The Buddhist, you sort of worship whatever this nebulous thing that you go into after you die. So it's sort of a 2-part religion, and one of them takes care of the today, and the other takes care of tomorrow. I compared that. I struggled. I've been a chaplain at the World Trade Center for, I was at their the first 3 weeks I took care of the people that were saved. We had 400 people died, and people were saved. And so all those people were burned, broken up, but lived. I worked with them in the hospital until they got out. And then I went down and blessed all the bodies and body parts for the next 8 months. It's quite a gruesome thing, and I wasn't prepared to do that, but I did. So as a result, I've become one of the standard chaplains, and every time they have a 9/11 celebration, which is every September 11th, every year, I'm one of the chaplains that goes down, and I'm the chaplain sometimes with the children, sometimes with the spouses, sometimes just randomly assigned to different people. And so I've been there, and I hear the prayers every year, and I go to my seminary is at Union Seminary in New York. That's when I graduated also with a year in general. But I asked they have this thing, got sermon. It's for us alumni, helping us to understand how to make sermons. And so I asked the professor, he wasn't there when I was there, Hal Tassing, I said, now what religion is this? Because I hear every time they're praying here on this podium, I get 2 people praying on the podium, I don't know if you've seen on television. And they're going to read 3 or 4 names, and then the other verse 3 or 4 names, and they pray specifically for their relatives, father, mother, son, daughter, whatever it was that happened to die, their immediate relative. And they always, I'd say 80% or more of the time, they're always saying, you're looking down on us and see how good your son or your daughter turned out, or how things have worked out, and they still know you're watching over us. And I think, what? Is that Christianity? I always wondered, why is that? And so whether they're Christians or Jews or whatever they are, they always have the same kind of a prayer. So I think, what is that? Well, I finally figured out that's Shinto. That is Shinto religion. That's the way you think are according to our ancestors. And so I think, well, probably that is a common Christian way of praying, that you think your father, your mother, or whatever, grandfather is still looking over us. But it's not really. I can't find anything in the Bible that says that's the way we pray as Christians. That is a common folk religion, I think, we have as Christians. So I thought when we compare apples to apples, we're very similar to the Japanese in kind of the way we think about things in the higher realm. Buddhists is, they think of something that's going to care for them, but we're different because Buddhists they're caught up into a general, peaceful, non-personal eternity, whereas we still think we are spiritual beings that somehow distinguishable, and I guess that's sort of where we tie a bit into the Shinto religion there. So we're individual, we can be recognized, and we're not, the other strange, you see people drawing heaven, it's always little angels with little wings, right, and they have the halos. I'm not sure where that comes from either. Still researching the history of our Christian faith and where some of these images come from. I guess some painter drew it that way. So we all think they're like angels and playing our harps. I don't think there's anything in the Bible that says that's the way heaven is like. Typically, heaven is expressed as a wedding feast, which in a way is kind of a conundrum because, I mean, we're not married, and Jesus said we're not married in heaven. So what is this wedding? Whose wedding are we going? Well, of course, it's the wedding of the believers to the Christ. But the image becomes sort of a strain to us as what is heaven all about. And so we're in an uncertain place here. We don't really know exactly where we're headed, or we know where we're coming from, but it challenges us. And our faith, I think, as Christians, it becomes less precise. And when we're trying to discuss it with somebody else, we kind of have this nebulous idea of what our faith is. So I've said that probably our best solution is to get back to the basics. And I use this little illustration here. You all see this in the back. These little booklets, Word Day to Day. I think a lot of people use these. I know there's a whole title all back there. We're not too much in touch with what our scriptures are. We hear it on Sunday, and I think when you come if you come every Sunday, I think you might get 20% of the Bible over 2-3 years. Whereas you read this, you get about 40% of the Bible over a 3-year cycle. So you read quite a bit of the Bible if you follow this. So I'm always a proponent of finding these meditations every Sunday, as you know. People who read this regularly, repeating this, that has a different, chooses a different reflection. Whatever the reading is, here May 18th is Proverbs, you're reading the Proverbs, if you read the whole Proverbs, then there's a reflection that's written, and now they identify who the writers are, over the back you can find who they are. And so every day has an Old Testament reading, a Psalm, a New Testament epistle, and then the Gospel. So you could if you follow this along. So I really think this is something good. I really try to promote these sorts of little booklets to people to follow along their faith, because part of what our struggle is we don't know enough about the Bible. And that's supposedly everything is rooted in the Bible and our biblical understanding. We don't all have the same interpretation of what we read, but it's, we've got to read it and try to understand what it is. And then a lot of times you understand one part of the Bible by comparing it with something else. When I was in seminary, I remember my professor said, what is the creed? The creed is not, we say what we believe, but it really sets buoy markers. If you go around in the channel here, you have a red buoy marker and a green buoy marker. Right? You got to stay between those to get on the other side. You're going to hit the shoals or the rocks or something dangerous. So our creeds are setting, this is what we believe. It doesn't say exactly how we believe it, but it's the same way with the Bible. It doesn't give us an exact answer. We have problems. We read the Bible. Well, you've heard the word, you flip through the Bible, and it comes up as he went out and hung himself. And then they thought, that's a no good choice. And they said, flip to another part of the Bible, says, go down and do likewise. And they said, he hates that one. Then he goes to the one and says, what thou do it quickly. So they said, there's not a way to study the Bible is to randomly pick out verses, because you come up with a very strange theology, worse than what we have already. So it's good to have a more broad picture. Each Sunday, like today, we have 3 of the readings. We're talking about sheep or shepherd. The 4th one talks about a deer. Dorcas means a deer. And we saw deer coming down here today. But they don't always have to be exactly the same focus, but shepherd is the shepherd. That's the image that we follow today. It follows Jesus is being questioned around Christmas time. This is sort of a Hanukkah Feast of the Tabernacles, which happens around December. And it's a major feast in the Jewish religion. And it's this time that they're challenging him, because at Hanukkah, the main focus is how the Jews were delivered by Antiochus Epiphanes. I'm sorry, Antiochus Epiphanes was the one who sort of had, he was the terrible ruler of the around 165 BC. And he was one of the, when Alexander the Great, his great empire stretched from India to Spain, was broken up. It ended up with three major generals that took it over, and Antiochus Epiphanes was one of them, had the Middle East, Israel. And when he came in to establish his rule over the Jews, he took over the temple and made it a secular temple in a way, because he wanted to be deified. And so the Romans deified themselves, so he deified himself. So he put an image of himself looking, dressed like Zeus, on the sacred Holy of Holies altar in the sacred temple. And it was just a total offense to the Jews. How he just, so terribly dismembered their religion. And so they hated him with a great white heat, and they focused on the Maccabees, which is also one of the books in the middle of the Bible that they talked about. The Judas Maccabeus and his sons came in and drove out Antiochus, defeated him. And so they were seen as the image of what a messianic figure would do, would clear out the Romans, the people who are subjecting us to all this bad treatment. So that was a glorious time for the Maccabees. It was a glorious time for Israel. And so eventually the Romans came in and took over everything, and the Maccabean clan disappeared. But now they have the Romans. When Jesus is there, the Romans are in charge. They want to get rid of the Romans, so they expect the Messiah to come just like Judas Maccabeus and wipe them out. So this image of how the Messiah should behave is not what Jesus is doing. He's not working to develop an army and soldiers and weapons. He has a different kingdom that he's bringing to life. And it's challenging this historic picture of what the Messiah is going to be. So they don't like that. He's not popular. So he tries to show them what the real Messiah of God does. In chapter 9 of John, we read chapter 10 of chapter 9, he's taken a man who's born blind from birth. Can never see. How can he ever see? And he heals him, and he sees. There's a whole dialogue in chapter 9. So he shows them in great detail what God's power is. But they don't get it. They don't get it. They're still looking for a military manager who's going to come in and take over and get rid of the Romans. So Jesus is confronted over and over again by people who don't want to believe that he is the Messiah because they're looking for an earth-based person. A good shepherd is the image we like to feel that God is for us. Reading from the book of Revelation, it's the Lamb. It's talking about the Lamb of God who comes to the throne. And other parts of the Revelation shows the Lamb is wounds. It's a wounded lamb. It's a lamb that has signs of something that disastrous happened to the lamb. We're interpreting this as, Jesus, the marks of crucifixion. But in the Lamb, if you read that, at the end of that passage that you heard read from Revelation, the Lamb becomes a shepherd, right? The Lamb becomes the shepherd. We would call him the shepherd. The Lamb is the shepherd. That's interesting. So if you're a lamb and now you're a shepherd, at least you understand what lambs go through. That's the idea. He is the Lamb. He has been on earth. He understands human life. He understands human frailties and human problems. And yet, he now is able to lead us. He's not just leading us as a theoretical Messiah, but as someone who has lived and died and struggled just as we do. So that's the type of shepherd that we like to think of as Jesus, and that is exactly the biblical portion. I heard a story of a mother of 8 children was asked if she had any favorites. Favorites, she replied, yes, I have favorites. I love the one who is sick until he's well again. I love the one who is in trouble until she's safe again. I love the one who is farthest away until he comes home. That's what Jesus is like. That's what God is like. He's a divine parent whose love never stops. You may stop loving God, you may forget about God, but God never stops loving us. We can't run from God because our legs are far too short. You can't get away from God. That's not a threat. That's a promise. So when we think of Jesus as our good shepherd, he has come to us in a form that is understanding exactly the frailties we go through, and yet saves us from it. Amen.